Hello and welcome to Thoughts on Talks, where Reverend Mike is making me laugh. And he will probably make you laugh too. That's part of why we do this show, to take the Sunday talk that he gives.
What I need. All right, sorry.
To hear him sing a little bit, which he doesn't do much during a Sunday talk, and to sort of take deep dives and digressions from what the Sunday talk was about. Yes, we swim in it. And I think we digress more than we deep dive. But
leave now while you can.
Yesterday's talk for August 9th was in the theme for August, inclusion in action. And the talk topic was, who are we? And I'm looking because I'm expecting him to start singing any moment, but he's,
who are we? Ooh, 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 ooh.
And that's what my mom was singing at home and shared it on the Zoom call afterwards during our Zoom fellowship.
She sang it better though.
I don't know. You guys could do a duet. I'm not sure Roger Daltrey would approve, or any of the members of the band The Who that originally did it.
Well, in my youth, I could do a pretty good Roger Daltrey, I have to say.
All right. Next time we have some kind of talent show, we'll do some Roger Daltrey and swinging a microphone and all that stuff. So who are we was talking about getting clear on our identities and the identities of others to bring understanding and oneness. And I wrote down this quote because I thought it was really good. Maybe I shouldn't skip to that. Maybe I'll start a little before that. That our identity is a demonstration of the values that we most identify with. Actually, you said with which we most identify, which would be more grammatically correct.
Oh, good.
Check you out.
I know.
And then you were talking about when we look at our spiritual communities in CSL, Centers for Spiritual Living and Religious Science, if we have diversity without inclusion, we have two-ness instead of oneness. And for those who want to go back to the Sunday Talk video and find it, that's at 37 minutes and 43 seconds in.
Took me that long to make that point?
Well, you don't start right at the beginning because there's music, and we're reading the principles, which you talked about in your talk as well. And Reverend Nancy talks, and we light the healing candle and
all that good stuff.
The flames of faith. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of content that goes in before you even start talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a full service.
There you go. So were there any kind of side thoughts about identity that came up for you that you didn't pack into your talk?
Well, I was trying really hard to not be political yesterday.
Since the week before you got all
the
fired up.
Thing, I mean, that whole thing is just so absurd.
About the not wearing masks.
Yeah, and the way it's been politicized, and just the way just common horse sense has now been politicized.
Yes.
And just we really, sometimes I really do think we're moving into an idiocracy sometimes, like the movie,
Yeah.
It's just, wow, we really have to argue about this. So, but what that is just one more manifestation of this idea of identity politics. But identity politics can't happen unless we identify with stuff.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, it started out as pretty innocuous stuff, like, hey, I'm a desert high scorpion, and you're a Roseman Roadrunner.
Right.
Right. But you'd have
Yeah.
a football game, then everybody would shake hands at the end, and you know,
It's like those
off you go.
those television shows or movies with families who have been feuding for generations and they don't even know why anymore, but
Yeah.
it's just become so much a part of their identity to hate those people.
Right. So we've seen, and you know, that's not to say that some of it isn't legit, but my concern is, and I've just decided that from a church perspective, that's why I really hammered on the principles at the end, you know, because my concern is, like, because this goes back to last week as well, right? So our country isn't perfect. The Constitution certainly is not a perfect document. It's certainly not the Bible.
Right.
Right? The president is not the Pope, you know, and the you know, Congress are not the gathering of bleeding deacons, even though they often act like it. But at
And
the
they're
end
not
of all this,
necessarily even the smartest people in the country. They're not the you know, the people, they're not a think tank even necessarily. It's people.
well, it's just, you know, at the end of all this, we're going to have to build something.
Yeah.
Right. And so my concern is, and I was alluded to this even at an organizational level, and not so much at our church level that I've been able to see. Of course, no one has been here for 5 months, but
Right.
The we need to really consciously break out of the knee-jerk stuff around identity that just it does not serve us as an individual and serve as a collective. So I love my Irish heritage. I like joking about it. It's kind of a shtick in my ministry. It's a shtick in my personal life. But, you know, that doesn't mean that I'm going to uproot everything and insist that we live by, you know, Irish, you know, Sinn Féin politics or something, right?
Right.
And so I just think we need to just take a breath and just and part of that is, though, also is to be willing to look at things and to really glean truth from belief, because they're often not the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
And we think they are, but if you tease them out, right? So for me, I believe in God. I believe in one power, one self-existent cause, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe it because I've given it careful consideration through the course of my lifetime, from being an altar boy to the present.
Mm-hmm.
There have been times when my faith has certainly waxed and waned, you know, just depending on, you know, the latest distraction I had. But the belief was always there. But for an atheist, my belief is not truth. For me, it's a truth for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And when we get a group of people together and we say the declarations of principle, those are beliefs that we share that we see as a truth for our life. They're guiding principles. But, you know, a Catholic may not see it that way. And certainly I use an atheist because an atheist doesn't believe in God at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, so that's, calling it truth isn't going to mean anything to a person like that.
Right.
And yet, so that's fine in the realm of spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
But in the world of effect, which is where we've incarnated on this earth plane,
Mm-hmm.
and on this earth plane, we have to figure out how to get along together. And so we have to figure out how to do that e pluribus unum thing, right? Out of many, one. And preferably do it without some 9/11 event, right? So it would be great to use the pandemic, and we sort of were doing it in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Use the pandemic to come together. We're going to do this right thing and blah, blah, blah. And then I don't even know really what happened, you know, even just because one guy starts calling it a hoax and fake news and all that, you know, I don't know how it all got derailed but you know, here we are. When I saw that number where if we all wore masks, that this thing would be knocked down in 3 weeks, I said, oh, well, that's cool. That's doable because, you know, most people in Southern California are wearing masks, at least where we live.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like, oh, okay, well, we're almost there, right?
Yeah.
Then you find out 40% of the country is compliant. Like, what are you guys doing?
I saw a video on YouTube or Facebook where they showed millennials, our president, talking about what he says our statistics are, and then juxtaposing it with the death rate and the infection rate and all of that. And there were young people from all around the world. One of them was in South Korea, and she saw the death rate and she started crying. She said, there's no reason for this.
Yeah.
And others, like in New Zealand, were just like, what is he talking about? This, you know, we shut everything, you know, they did all the steps.
Right.
And so the rest of the world is looking at us and wondering what went wrong, what derailed it,
Right.
how could people be taking a stand on something like putting a piece of fabric over your face. I saw another video of a woman in Costco, I think it was, who just sat down on the ground, refused to leave, but refused to put on a mask because she was standing up for her liberty in her mind. And I thought, really, that's your stand? There are so many, I could give you suggestions about other things to, you know, make your stand on, to fight for.
Right. So, you know, so this is going on out there.
Yeah.
So it's just a great metaphor for all of us to think about. So last week I spoke to, you know, the way that we use, that we can mask all kinds of things from the truth. And then that the way out really is to lean more into our spiritual practice to develop a close contact with the divine as we understand it. Because really, if you think about it, if everybody did that, you know, Catholic, Jew, Buddhist, you know, each one just said, okay, I am just going to go into love.
Right.
And do what, you know, and to be still for 10 minutes a day and be guided by that. You know, I just have to feel, I think that is going to be the way out. So,
well, and to bring it back to identity, if we all base our identity on the spirit that we believe in, or, you know, whatever we call that higher power, that universal spirit within us, even if some people don't believe it's within them, to focus on that and make that the identity, which is kind of what you're talking about, to make that the daily practice.
Well, yeah, but it needs to be something general, right? So really the identity has to be peacemaker.
What is that you just put? Oh, your camera stand?
Yeah, Stephanie just checked in here, so.
Oh, okay.
With her.
Send her a cute emoji from me. Now you get to see the behind the scenes of what happens in the Rev's office while he's at work.
Yeah.
It's a little different than suit and tie guy, although you weren't in suit and tie earlier.
No, I won't be doing that till September.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but at any rate, this idea of identity and just encouraging people again. I just feel like I've been talking to this kind of stuff for 5 or 6 years. I'm surprised, frankly, that people still tune in. Right?
Well, it's one of those lessons that we have to keep applying from all different angles, and that's what life is. That we are beings that are spiritual beings, so we come from one power, but we're expressing in infinite ways, and that the material world is duality, and that's why spirit incarnated to experience all of these aspects. And so this is what we're here to do, is try to relate to each other and relate to our other expressions. And it just seems,
and to get along, for crying out loud.
Yeah, it seems like we as humans spur each other on to improvement and evolution by some kind of competition or combat. So,
well, I think that's so, but if you look at evolution, in the biological sense, it doesn't happen everything status quo.
right.
Right? Evolution is a result of a mutation, and a mutation can either be some kind of genetic anomaly, but usually it's something that presents itself that gives the species an advantage over its environment in some way.
Right.
And so, we're pretty much cooked as far as our biology goes as humans. Right? We've been a very successful species where, we basically have transformed the earth. Right? At one time, the earth was covered in dense forests. Those are all gone. Right? We can go through all that. But the next evolution really has to be within our thinking. And if that does not happen, we will not survive. Or we will be living in an environment that will make any of the, it'll be, it may be a peaceful version of Mad Max, right? Where everything's just like desert and, so it's hard to imagine, where there still wouldn't be places of learning and that kind of thing. Now we've got to get a handle, because what I would really love to see us do as a people is to come together as one to ensure that the great, great, great grandchildren who are never going to meet have a life and an experience of life where the world is at least as verdant as it is right now, at least that. And which is far different than the one that I grew up in 4 billion people ago.
Yeah.
Right? I remember seeing, myself personally, the world's largest sugar pine tree in Northern California. And it had sprayed on it, "Do not cut, world's tallest tree." And then I remember 10 years later, I was watching like CBS News or something, and a news clip of them cutting down the world's largest sugar pine tree. And I was just saddened by that. The stump of that tree could probably fill my office. It was that big. And this is just, this is kind of where we're at. And it's tied to, but see, all of it is a consciousness thing. Right? Because we have a consciousness of consumption, right? Particularly in our country, but in all of the Western countries, that we've, it's a consciousness of consumption, and we now have so we have on the one side this consciousness of consumption where we're like more, whether it's electronics or food or
entertainment,
all the various things that we can be distracted by.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have this huge knowledge brain trust, if you will, that can actually has enough in it to address the very things that are that concern us.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, to your point, it doesn't seem like we tackle them until the 11th hour.
Right.
And, I ponder this sometimes. What if, and this is kind of a Star Trek thing, right? Well, the 24th, in the 24th century,
Mm-hmm.
you no longer, work for the accumulation of wealth, right? So
Mm-hmm.
everybody finds it's almost kind of a Marxian idea, right? A Marxist idea that people are working for the common good, except we know that they don't. The Soviet Union, the collapse of the Soviet Union is a perfect, and any of these other setups, communist setups, not socialist, but communist setups, they don't work because they take away incentive.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the answer to that is, but this swinging it back around to this idea of evolving,
Mm-hmm.
to evolve either culturally or within the global mythos
Mm-hmm.
of someone striving throughout their lifetime to be the best person they know to be, and then to be honored, right? So let's say little Baron Trump, right? He's in a family of privilege and power, and he decides that what he really wants to do is to build houses and to be a carpenter, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and then to allow him then to pursue that, right? Because already, little Johnny, if he's good at if he's good at calculus, is going to find his way into a school some kind of way, right? But the other things should be true too, and that all of them are honored,
right?
So
yeah.
Anyway, I don't know why we got off onto that, but
well,
it is potential for what we're talking about, because this religious science teaching really is about attuning with the divine, and then bringing forth at your most creative, connected and creative expression, the most creative and expressive life that you can bring forth.
Right.
And to call forth, not just to do it blindly, but also to know that, you can make your daily bread too.
Right.
Then some. You can maybe even butter the edges once in a while. And both sides. Right? You can live on the overflow.
yes.
That's the great potential, right? But we get caught up in all these squabbles over this. We got real things to do, and we're bitching about masks.
Yeah.
Or fake news, or, deep state, or some of these other things that I've tried to tackle more as a metaphor. So I don't know what's going on with other people, but it just seems to me like it's everywhere. It's everywhere I turn. Right? And we have to find a way to heal this. Right?
Yes.
And that's why I think these talks with Salam are helpful, because Salam is sharing with us his experience as a Black man growing up in South Chicago. And so it's that idea of who are we? This how do we get here? That's kind of the question. It's just remarkable that given where he came from, right? And this is so that's a great possibility,
right?
And so
Actually,
now how do we support that so that salam is not the exception, but rather the norm? That's
right.
really what we're talking about.
I saw a really inspiring interview with the current mayor of the city of Compton here in Southern California. And she is a millennial, and her focus is heart-based leadership, love-based leadership that involves the community. And she invited the gang leaders of the Bloods and the Crips to a conversation, and they stood in a circle, and she said, what do you need from your city to make life better for you? And nobody had ever asked them that before. And then she invited them to be part of those changes that they asked for. And she's actually gotten big business to invest in this city that had been probably redlined for some time, that there was no investment in there. And she got those businesses to agree that at least 30% or some percentage had to be hired from the city of Compton, that they had to be local residents. And so she's just been really community building in this place that is very similar, I would think, to the south side of Chicago or some of these other urban cities that have been redlined and cut off from investment. And one of the things she was talking about too was teaching the people who own property and who want to own property in Compton that it really is an investment that helps generations build wealth, which is what Black people have missed out on through the redlining practices of the banks and loans, to help build those in that community where many of them already own property. So I was just really inspired to see this happening now in Southern California. I was crying. I was telling my mom about it because she missed part of it, and I just started tearing up when I was telling her that, because it's a young woman who's really making a difference right where she is.
Right, and she's making the lives of her constituents, right, her neighbors,
and
better.
she's doing it with them
within a generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
this I think, she's really onto something, because really the way out of this situation that we find ourselves in is
together.
Together, but it's also this is where, as much as capitalism has been taking it on the chin, right? But it is a great driver of these kinds of things, right? And it's where we find the entrepreneurial spirit and so forth, driven by self-interest. So it does need to be regulated. But from a Main Street perspective of supporting, we need to get our people back to work.
And opening opportunities so that everybody has the opportunity to, the American dream, to work hard, work your way up, and be able to achieve what everybody wants, which is to have your own home and a family and, peace in your life.
That, our parents had, I say our parents, but, I had a small window, right? In my 20s, had I been paying attention and chosen wisely in a life partner, that situation may have gone a little differently, because home ownership is the key, which is what the point you were making.
Yeah.
Because that appears to really be the key for developing wealth, generational wealth.
Right.
That really helps lift people. So anyway, it's And so I've always thought that this teaching that we have is just aligns with that idea so much,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it really, I have found it to be a great support for innovation
Mm-hmm.
and for courageously stepping out.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes people get, I think, in my view, a little foolish in that, and that they'll, it's like the idea: if you build it, they will come,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they just go for broke. Like, yeah, you could probably step it back from that. Right? If you build it smartly and in a sustainable fashion, they will come.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, there's a certain amount of work we need to do for ourselves. God helps those who help themselves. We need to treat and move our feet.
Correct.
Yes, you can build something, but you also need to look at the whole picture and make things sustainable. And that's important.
And there's going to be effort,
Yeah.
work involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because you are striving to achieve a vision or a dream, it will feel less like
Right. It gives you more energy to do the work that needs to be done because you're inspired to do it. So you have that extra boost.
so. But I have to say, I'm glad the book is done.
Yes.
That was not a work of me waking up. Oh, let me write my vision.
So for those who happen to maybe be watching but didn't see the Sunday service, Reverend Mike's book is finished. Do you have a copy of it right there to show us? A little visual aid.
No, I do
Blue
not.
collar spirituality.
Yeah.
And the image on the front is a drill going into wood, drill bit going into wood, right?
Yep.
So you're
Blue
drilling.
collar spirituality, finding a God that works.
And it has a good manly carpentry metaphor.
Yeah, it's just it has building stories laced through it. It uses a building metaphor. Um,
Good.
it's more of a shallow wade rather than a deep dive, and the idea is to encourage the reader to become spiritually curious, and then they can find their way to a New Thought church. So at the end of the book, I have resources, and I have Centers for Spiritual Living and Unity Worldwide and Agape and our center, Granada Hills. So I hope people will get curious. And then I have a bunch of books that I've, from Beckwith to Eric Butterworth,
Cool.
Ernest Holmes, of course, the film. They're all listed in there. So
very good.
in the beginning, I was trying to write it to a generalized audience, and then as I read it, I'm like, this is not generalized.
Right, you're writing what you know, so you're.
Well, and I think, certainly anyone who's written, who's listened to Abraham or Matthew Kahn or Eckhart Tolle, the Four Agreements, Don Miguel. Anybody's read anything like that, this will, But I think most working guys haven't. So this is kind of the, the New Thought, fast. I think you could probably read the book in 2 hours, I'm guessing. So it's short. And it has little worksheets in it at the end of each chapter.
Cool.
So we'll see what happens. I hope it helps I want so much for working people to get what we do here, because our teaching, for someone who has, 3 or 4 years of post-high school education, our teaching is kind of an easy fit, because particularly if you're a liberal arts major, right? Because you probably think about life in philosophical terms anyway. And to me, the writings of Ernest Holmes kind of describe that in a very logical fashion.
Yeah.
And that's accessible. But I think we often focus more on the low-hanging fruit. I think working people are take a little more effort, connect with, because they're busy.
Yeah.
Many are working on Sundays because they feel like they have to.
Yeah.
So the first chapter in the book is just about time and making time, and the value of making time to be still in the morning, but also the value in setting aside Sunday mornings for spiritual pursuits.
Yeah.
So I take off from there, but I don't mention God until the last chapter.
Sneaky. Well, it's one of those loaded words. So if you're not in a community where you've all already agreed pretty much on what that word means to all of you, you go to somebody outside that community and it could be quite a different discussion that you're having.
Right. Well, when it's all done and available, I'll get you a copy and we'll do a session here and just kind of get your impressions on it. Because I don't know how many men will be buying this book, but I'm sure most of their wives or girlfriends will be.
We don't know anything. I mean, the thing about writing a book and releasing it into the world is just like anything else. You have to do the work to promote it. And, just like musicians, it's really kind of one person at a time for a while. As you do book signings or readings and just connecting with people, and that's how it gets known to others. But it's a shifting from the writing to, and then the editing, and then production, and then it's all promotion.
Well, it's also interesting in that several years ago, Sherry Gideons had an online radio show. And so she was interviewing me. I think I may had been playing around with, because I basically have written 2 books. First one I hated and threw in the corner and never went back to. And so that was like maybe The Purge. And then this, so one was writing to blue collar spirituality, and then this one was writing from. And but what I wanted to share about that is she was interviewing me and somehow we got to talking about it. And I was talking about how one of my favorite things to do in building, when I didn't have a bunch of other stuff to do, I used to love to dig footings, which, footings are the deep part of the concrete, where you get down into the undisturbed soil, and particularly in this area that has a lot of clay in it, so you can build you can cut a nice straight square cut trench. I don't know why that's always from the very first day, there's something about putting a pick into dirt that I always liked.
Really? That's like, you find it so satisfying. I'm wondering if it's an ancestral thing.
Yeah, maybe, before I was digging the Praties and now I'm digging footings. But but I was talking about the satisfaction of working with your hands, of doing trade work. Part of it is, seeing where you've been at the end of the day.
Mm.
right? So in ministry, if I'm doing a lot of phone work or just paperwork stuff, you don't, it doesn't look
Yeah.
any different, you know. But in construction, you can see where you've been. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's not good news if you've made an error, but and it's very soulful that way. And
Mm.
we actually had a woman call in who was very emotional, who had been giving her husband a hard time about just being a laborer,
Mm.
right? And how she had been on him and nagging him about doing something else, but he loved the work. And she just called in to say, gosh, I get it now.
Mm.
That was
Wow.
very, I have to say, that was very fulfilling, a very fulfilling moment.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so,
and so long the society has kind of looked down on people who work with their hands, who work outside, uh, as if laborers aren't smart enough to do anything else, anything higher. But we need everybody, and we need people who love what they're doing and who have an intuitive sense and a knowledge to do it well and properly. If we had actually people building our houses that didn't know how to do it just because we thought it was a job for, you know, anybody, then we wouldn't have very well built houses. And I see that like in administrative work, file clerks, or, uh, sort of they think anybody can put files in a box. But to try to find things when somebody hasn't done it with a sense of logic or an interest in putting things in order, it's really hard to find things again.
right.
So, yeah, we need to value all the work that people bring and let
Well,
people
and
find that within themselves.
right. Well, and tied to that is the different kinds of intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So you are an extremely gifted writer, graphic designer, content builder, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you probably don't really go around doing proofs for calculus.
Nope.
Yeah.
But I have been thinking lately, especially with some of the newer clients I've been taking on in my work, that I pushed aside administrative work. I pushed aside in school. I was like in eighth grade, I got a science award, but I thought science was too easy or boring. I wanted to sing and perform on stage and do all of the creative stuff. So over and over again, I kept myself out of pursuing, like, I never took chemistry. I took geology instead because it seemed a little more useful living in earthquake land. um, but I purposely took myself out of the sciences when maybe, science and mathematics I might have excelled at, but I just devalued it.
Well, I
So,
think you'd be really, I don't know about the science part, but
mm,
certainly you'd be good at math because you've been doing a level of coding with building websites, right? So what and then we'll get off of this subject, but
mm,
I went back to college in my 30s,
mm,
and um, and I was really reluctant to do it. But
mm,
I just decided, you know what? I don't have to get A's. I can get C's. That's average.
mm-hmm,
And so I took an algebra class. You know, because you have to take some of these classes if you're starting from behind, as I was. Even though I'd had college level trig, that was in my 20s,
mm.
my late teens. And frankly, I just kind of buffaloed my way through it. So I take this class, and it's the same high school algebra class that I took as in my junior year and
Mm.
washed out of, right? But you only have a semester at junior college to do this.
Okay.
So this is over at Pierce.
Mm.
And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to have to take this class. I'm just going to go take it. And I made a commitment that I would show up for every class and then I would do the homework. Because I never tried taking a math class and doing those two things. And lo and behold, I was one of the top students in the class. It was pretty easy. But my point in bringing this up was, but I think it was my years in construction that taught me how to think.
Right.
Because
yeah.
I was in a three-dimensional world, solving problems, right? So algebra is just about solving for the unknown. Mm-hmm. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Right? And I was doing that all the time, trying to figure out why a building was out of square or why the rafter didn't fit right or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So your mind is being trained in this three-dimensional way, and then you go back to the book learning and you go, whoa. See?
Yeah.
And after a while, I kind of felt like, I didn't finish all of that because I realized at some point I was like the scarecrow going to the wizard looking for a piece of paper when I had the intelligence all along.
Right.
I think that's the truth for most working people.
Yeah.
But because they don't have book learning, they may not see themselves as intelligent. And the truth is that every living thing has some level of intelligence.
And creativity as well. A lot of people
called it degrees of livingness.
Mm.
Right? But really, it's kind of degrees of intelligence too.
Yeah.
So, even a worm knows not to go to the dry spots. That's kind of an intelligence, right?
Yes.
COVID has no nervous system at all, but it seems to be able to thrive just fine.
It seems to know something.
Yeah. So, anyway.
So I'm going to read this Howard Thurman quote because it just popped into my head, and it's from your talk, and you sent me the notes. There is something in every one of you that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. It is the only true guide you will ever have. And if you cannot hear it, you will all your life spend your days on the ends of strings that somebody else pulls. And that's Howard Thurman. Yeah. So that is about listening to our own inner guidance rather than giving up the power to somebody else to tell us what is valuable, what we should do with our time and our lives and our energy. All of those things we need to turn within and anchor ourselves in our true identity, which is as spiritual beings having a human experience. And then we can have the human experience with a sense of curiosity and playfulness and wonder and cooperation with each other, because we're all just reflections of the same spirit. Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't it?
Yeah. So I think we've done a good job here on our identity talk.
Yeah.
And coming in under an hour, which is also nice.
Yes.
And so and
we even managed to talk a little bit of spirituality, which is also good.
Yeah. So anybody who hasn't seen this past Sunday's talk, which was August 9th, you can go to the Centers for Spiritual Living Granada Hills YouTube channel. It's there with all of the previous Sunday talks. And August 2nd was when Reverend Mike was all on fire about wearing masks. So if you meet somebody who hasn't been wearing it and you want some good content to send them, you can send them that. Because on YouTube.
That was a good talk.
Yeah, it was.
Because the rant was actually a setup. Right?
It was good. Setup or not.
Yeah, so because I practiced it a few times, which I don't usually have time to do, so that I wouldn't get too carried away.
Ah, yes, control.
But that was a good talk. So that's definitely one worth checking out. And also, folks can also join me around noon-ish because I do a Facebook live prayer time.
Yeah.
So I take 3 to 4 minutes. You know, sometimes I get a little chatty, but there is a prayer, and it's done in an interfaith way, which is I call spiritual mind treatment interfaith prayer.
Cool. And then there's the Wednesday night meditations.
That's right.
Which are also live streamed on YouTube. So there are lots of ways you can connect along with Thoughts on Talks to the Centers for Spiritual Living.
And classes. We have classes coming.
Yes.
September, there's going to be all kinds of stuff. Nikki's got a class. She's going to be starting on Tuesdays.
Mm-hmm.
Jeannie Hoffman is going to start up again with the Sangha on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're still listening, go to the website and it'll all be up there by the end of the week.
Yes, and thanks for joining us on Thoughts on Talks. I'm Malayna Dawn, and that was Reverend Mike McMorrow. Now you know. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oops, I'm clicking wrong things.